Imagine stepping out of your home, and the first thing you see isn't your neighbor's dog, but a 10-ton mammoth with tusks the size of a small car. Or maybe a saber-toothed cat, with canines like daggers, lounging where your mailbox should be. This wasn't a nightmare. This was just another Tuesday for our ancient ancestors. Welcome to the Pleistocene, an era where humans weren't at the top of the food chain. They were on the menu. Today, we're diving deep into the past, to a time when giants roamed the earth and humanity was just trying to survive. We'll explore how our small, clever ancestors, armed with nothing more than stone, wood, and guts, managed to face off against the most terrifying beasts imaginable. This is the story of the ultimate underdogs, a tale of survival against all odds. How did we go from being hunted to becoming the planet's dominant species? The answers are more incredible than you might think. Let's start with the undisputed king of the Ice Age, the woolly mammoth. Picture this: an animal standing over 10 feet tall at the shoulder, weighing more than 6 tons, covered in a thick coat of shaggy hair. It's massive. Curved tusks could be 15 feet long. A single charge from a mammoth could flatten a small group of hunters. So, how on earth did our ancestors, who were physically much smaller and weaker, even think about hunting one? The key wasn't brute force. It was brain power and teamwork. A lone hunter stood no chance. But a coordinated group, that was a different story. Archaeological evidence suggests our ancestors were masters of strategy. They wouldn't just run at a mammoth head. They would use the landscape to their advantage. Imagine a hunting party, silently tracking a herd for days, learning their patterns, waiting for the perfect moment. They might look for a young, old, or isolated mammoth, separating it from the protection of the herd. Then, they'd spring the trap. Using fire and loud noises, they could drive the terrified animal towards a natural hazard, like a steep cliff, a narrow ravine, or a deep bog. Once the mammoth was trapped and immobilized, the real work began. The hunters would move in, a flurry of motion and courage. Their weapons were simple but effective. They used heavy spears tipped with razor-sharp flint points, known as Clovis points. These weren't meant for throwing from a distance like a javelin. They were thrusting spears, designed for close-quarters combat. The goal was to inflict deep, bleeding wounds in the mammoth's vulnerable underbelly or sides. It was incredibly dangerous work. One wrong move, one sweep of that powerful trunk, and it was over. Some theories suggest the use of spear throwers, or this tool acted as a lever, essentially extending the hunter's arm and allowing them to launch a spear with much greater force and from a safer distance. This invention was a game-changer, tipping the odds ever so slightly in humanity's favor. The hunt wasn't a quick affair. It was a long, brutal, and exhausting battle, a war of attrition. But the reward was immense. A single mammoth could feed a clan for weeks, providing not just meat, but also hide for shelter and clothing, and bones and tusks for tools, weapons, and even art. But mammoths weren't the only giants on the block. Lurking in the shadows and forests was another apex predator, one that specialized in hunting large prey, the saber-toothed cat, or Smilodon. This wasn't your average big cat. Smilodon was built like a bear, with a powerful, stocky body designed for ambush, not long chases. And then there were those teeth. Its famous canine teeth could grow up to 7 inches long. They were surprisingly fragile satusa, but they were perfect for one thing: delivering a swift, deep, killing bite to the throat of its prey. For early humans, an encounter with a Smilodon was a life-or-death situation. Unlike the herd-dwelling mammoth, these cats were likely solitary or lived in small family groups, making them an unpredictable and terrifying threat. A hunter wandering alone or a child straying from the camp could become an easy meal. So, how did people defend themselves? Again, it came down to numbers and intelligence. Camps were likely set up in defensible locations, perhaps with a cliff at their back or near a water source that offered a clear view of the surroundings. Fire was humanity's greatest ally. A roaring fire would have been a powerful deterrent for any predator, especially at night. The flickering light and crackling flames would have kept the darkness, and the things that lurked within it, at bay. When confrontation was unavoidable, humans would have used the same tools: spears, fire, and their wits. A group of hunters, standing shoulder to shoulder, shouting and brandishing flaming torches and sharp spears, would have been an intimidating sight, even for a saber-toothed cat. It was about making themselves look bigger and more dangerous than they actually were. It was a high-stakes bluff, but one they had to win. There's also evidence from fossils, like those found at the Labrie tar pits, that humans and saber-toothed cats competed for the same food sources, sometimes even scavenging from each other's kills. It was a tense and deadly rivalry. Now, let's talk about The bear, not just any bear, but the short-faced bear archaeological. This was the largest carnivorous land mammal in North America during the Ice Age, and quite possibly the largest bear that ever lived. Standing on its hind legs, it could reach a height of 12 feet. It had long, slender legs, suggesting it was built for running, able to chase down prey at high speeds. It was a true monster, a walking nightmare. Unlike mammoths, which were herbivores, or which hunted large grazers, the short-faced bear was an opportunistic omnivore with a strong preference for meat. It was both a hunter and a scavenger, using its immense size to intimidate other predators and steal their kills. Imagine our ancestors successfully taking down a bison, only to have a short-faced bear show up to claim the prize. What do? You run. In a direct confrontation with a creature this massive and powerful, retreat was the only sensible option. Early humans were smart enough to know which battles they couldn't win. The risk of losing several members of your clan for a single meal just wasn't worth it. Survival meant knowing when to fight and when to flee. However, humans did hunt bears, but likely smaller species like the cave bear. These hunts were probably undertaken with extreme caution. Cave bears, as their name suggests, hibernated in caves. It's possible that hunters would attempt to kill them during their winter slumber, when they were at their most vulnerable. This was still incredibly risky. Waking a hibernating bear in a confined space is a recipe for disaster. But the caves themselves were also valuable resources, providing shelter from the elements. So, clearing them of their formidable occupants was a necessary, albeit terrifying, task. When we look back at this incredible era, it's easy to focus on the sheer terror of it all. But what's truly remarkable is the resilience and ingenuity of our ancestors. They didn't have claws, thick hides, or overwhelming strength. What they had was a mind capable of abstract thought, planning, and communication. They had the ability to create and use tools. And most importantly, they had each other. The social bond, the ability to cooperate and work as a team, was humanity's ultimate weapon. It allowed them to take on animals many times their size. It allowed them to defend their families against the most fearsome predators. It allowed them to share knowledge, passing down hunting techniques and tool-making skills from one generation to the next. Every successful hunt wasn't just a meal. It was a lesson learned and a story to be told around the fire, reinforcing the bonds of the community. These giants, the mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, the giant bears, they shaped us. The constant pressure of being hunted forced us to become smarter, more cooperative, and more innovative. Every challenge we overcame, every predator we outsmarted, was a step on the evolutionary ladder. We survived the Ice Age, not by being the strongest, but by being the most adaptable. Eventually, the great megafauna vanished. The climate changed, their food sources dwindled, and perhaps the constant pressure from an ever more effective human hunter was the final nail in the coffin. The giants were gone, and humanity was left to inherit the earth. The era of being the hunted was over. The age of the hunter had truly begun. When we look at the world around us today, at our cities and our technology, it's humbling to remember that it all started with a small group of people, armed with stone-tipped spears, staring into the eyes of a giant and choosing not to back down. Thanks for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this story of survival as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more adventures into our incredible past. Let me know in the comments which Ice Age beast you think was the most terrifying. See you next time.